Welcome, everyone, to the Contact Center Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today, I guarantee we have a fascinating conversation with Katalin Fritz. Now, Katalin, you are not only the Chief Customer Officer, but the Chief People Officer. You oversee, you're the Managing Director, I believe is the way to put it, in the Portugal Center. But we're going to talk today about the true surprise factor behind retention and growth. And we all know that to grow as businesses, we have to take care of our customer base. We know how fragile that can be. And in fact, there was a study that came out about a year and a half ago that said there was $3.7 trillion that were in play because of poor CX, because of the way that we're not handling across the board our customers. So this is a very big, very important conversation. I love it. We had a fascinating conversation before we started here about your background, and you have a really interesting mix from when you went to school and you studied linguistics, you went on to get an MBA in economics, you've been in marketing, you've risen now, you oversee as Chief People Officer, Chief Customer Officer, you have a very broad background, and you are now the proud mama of a new golden doodle.
Thank you for mentioning.
What I would love to do before we get started is just give you a chance to explain a little bit more about your background, and then we'll start right in.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving this opportunity without aiming to be overwhelming on the background. I think important when one would like to know me a bit better that, as you just mentioned, I didn't start initially in the business field. So my initial studies were more around literature, comparative literature, and linguistics, an aspect of the mathematical linguistics. And as I leaned into the, let's say, professional life, working life after graduation, I was coming closer to business processes and how companies work and how teams work and how people functions. All of these somehow built up brick by brick. I can connect with all of these academical knowledge, everything which is in business, and I truly enjoyed. So obviously this was a real motivation to see more and discover more. And then, as you just mentioned, I started my MBA studies, postgraduate studies parallel with work first. I had an amazing mentor in my first workplace, a female mentor, my former lead manager, but I really looked up her as a leader and a role model for myself. So I really appreciated her guidance, and I really appreciated her active support in these studies because both financially and also time-wise, she fully supported this further development, even if for her, unfortunately, I got a stipendium at the university from the Berlin campus of ESCP. So instead of bringing back all the new learnings to the company and utilize there, I decided in agreement with her that I moved to Berlin and discovering a little bit the world and how these economical studies and how students are differently approached and the learning curve differently approached. And back in the times in Budapest, I take the benefit and take the chance. So I moved out, and then from there, practically everything just came naturally because I started to work at Axel Springer here in Berlin as a practicant in the marketing department. Also still lots to do with the former publishing house radio type of experience I started with back in the times in Budapest I just shared. And then I moved out to London, started there in the position of product development manager, but it was mainly about building up a new product and find the right audience also in various locations, including Hungary, where I'm coming from originally. And then my first real leadership role was when the company promoted me to lead the first shared service center in Bratislava in Slovakia, so moved back again to the Central Eastern European region. And then this was followed by other destinations where the company relocated me, that time mainly in business development and operational roles. So learned a lot throughout this journey, then later on also in the Avis Budget Group, in the Budapest Shared Service Center, how to build strong end-to-end businesses reliable, with good processes, with how to approach talent management was also very important learning, with lots of failures and learnings also from my end. Obviously, each of these companies I worked for and still are very international, so culturally also an interesting mix of a very exciting times. I mean, I was always full with energy and motivation to do something new. So I was not job hopper in a way that changing the companies, but I was more changing in a kind of discovery mode the roles and what else can I add to my portfolio. And the guiding motivation for me always was, and by the way still is, what is enriching this portfolio that I can look with better, broader lenses to certain topics, situation, business problems to solve, people problems to solve, innovation as such, so how to innovate on behalf of the customers. And then was a bigger move, what I define as a bigger milestone when from the Budapest Shared Service Center of Avis Budget Group, which was truly exciting times with absolutely amazing people, lots of complex transition and transformation, but I was part of also with great leaders supporting me and great colleagues to work with and great teams. But I think was the kind of perspective change when I moved back to Berlin working for Amazon, because was moving to the other side of the table. I mean, customer service quality management is a little bit third-party role within the company to evaluate how we fulfill the customer needs, how we satisfy the customers, how to improve that experience end-to-end, very data-driven, very customer-obsessed. And needless to say, everyone knows Amazon, such an amazing company culture and such an amazing infrastructure they have, both in terms of technology, but also in terms of people. So really top talents. Wherever you go, you just learn on every meetings because so fantastic people are everywhere. So I think this was the journey up until I moved to Marley Spoon, which was in 2016 in my current company. I started to work as global head of customer communications initially, and Fabian Ziegler, the former CEO of the company, also founder, reached me out to support them in this journey. And I think I can really say that with my team, we built throughout the years and at high speed everything from absolutely scratch, what we have in this company, both frontline, but on the insights management, outbound functions. And I would say also the framework which is existing in the company to run a business here customer-led. And I assume we will talk about it a little bit more in practice, but I think for me is really engaging, reassuring when it's about the company itself to see that there is a place in an executive leadership group for a chief customer officer paired up with all people insights representing that core need in a company to have a seat of the customer in every single decision what we take, and also to ensure that we have a team which is aligned and motivated to deliver on that promise.
Well, what's really fascinating, one of the things that I've really been looking forward to about this conversation is I've interviewed before a chief people officer who had a PhD, and his thesis was on connecting the dots that we all know to be true, that if we have engaged employees, we have a much better chance of having engaged customers. If we have engaged customers, we have a much better chance of growth and revenue expansion. We know that to be true, but he proved it. And I thought it was just fascinating. So the fact that you're paired together as the chief customer officer and the chief business officer, you're bringing some of the high performance teams and people and engaged, that's what powers every business. Amazon knows that. You're doing that at Marley Spoon. So it leads me to our first question, because there's a part of it that sounds very known and understandable, and there's a part of it that has an element of surprise, and it's about building loyalty through consistency and surprise. So we all know that we have to be consistent with our brands. Our brands are a trust mark, and we can't break that trust. We have to be consistent in how we go out and deliver it in the marketplace. What do you mean by surprise and the balance of consistency and surprise? Because you put those two together and you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, look, very good and relevant question, especially in the case of Marley Spoon, because Marley Spoon is currently a meal kit and food solution provider. Obviously, we constantly work on enriching this portfolio and promise and offer to the customer. But our core main product at the very moment, both with our brand Marley Spoon and our brand Dinnerly, to provide weeknight cooking solutions for our customers in a form of a meal kit. And these two brands are serving different type of customer groups, but this is the main thing what we offer and what we sell, which basically means that we offer for our customers a subscription for a weekly delivery, and customers, of course, can order multiple times for different setups. I mean, they can order for 2 people twice per week, or they can order for 4 people, depending what are their actual circumstances, and with a continuously enriched range of products. So we have already products even beyond the meal kit, like marketplace and other type of items what they can add. But the core thing, just answering your question, is about the subscription. So we have to have a reliable delivery and a reliable cooking experience and a reliable box and a reliable customer service so that customers want to put that money from their wallet every single week to this product. And this willingness to repurchase, what we actively also measure in our case to ensure that when it's about the customer insights and guiding metrics of customer insights, to really understand how far they are with that motivation upon getting the box, upon cooking the meal, because each and every touch point of this experience is influencing that willingness to return to us next week. And therefore, again, answering your question, for us it's totally core that this base promise is always fulfilled. I need to say that on an individual level, unfortunately, because so many factors are there influencing this experience. Obviously, there might be factors outside of our influence. It's in capabilities like delivery, companies, weather-related issues. So anything and everything what might happen in the world, and even if we deliver 100% and the customer service is top-notch, there are still some factors which might unfavorably influence this experience. But the intention is from our end, without any failure, deliver on this base promise. And whenever we try to surprise or being personal or utilize all of that knowledge we have about individual customers, ultimately is coming on the top or should come to the top. So the two things are not working in isolation or standalone. So we might beautifully surprise the customer with some new offer or with a personal touch, but we might very much surprise on our end, learning that there is no interest to listen to that offer or for that conversation because they had, for example, 2 negative experience in a row, and even if they didn't place a complaint, the experience was not optimum. So why should they trust? So I think the two things are going hand in hand, and for us is also crucial, therefore, that we find ways to learn about all of these at the right time and in the right form of data, which could be anecdote, could be a data signal, could be anything, and utilize all of that data for the customer's benefit, and of course, in this sense, also for our benefit. And everything we do, especially in the customer insights part, in the data part, are related to this, understanding who our customers are, understanding what are they doing, why are they doing, when are they doing, and building strong processes, even mechanisms that whatever we detect is immediately triggering next process step for the benefit of the customer experience.
I want to get into and ask you about how you learn about the customers. That's so important. But before we leave the conversation about surprise, when we had our last conversation, there were things that you talked about because every company, we have to be consistent. Absolutely. And we always know we have to add value and innovate. But you chose the word surprise, and that's different than saying we have to add value or innovate might be in our product line, might be in our delivery. It might be in a number of different ways. Surprise is a different entity on itself. Why did you say surprise? What is it about surprise? And then is there consistency in how you deliver surprise? That's another question too.
Maybe I share an example on a surprise, because customers always, at least first time when they experience this from us, they feel that, oh, this is a surprise. And we can call innovation. It's very thin the line, but let's not use huge words like innovation, because I feel a little bit, and maybe this is the other reason I'm using the word surprise, that lots of words nowadays are a bit overused. Personalization, innovation, AI tag, and sometimes simple solutions which are accessible. So surprise to me is an example in our world that, as mentioned, we are very data driven. We collect lots of data. One of these data point, which is an algorithmic developed data, is the real-time risk assessment on whether the customer is prone to churn based on various attributes what we use in that algorithm. And I know that other companies are also often build this kind of algorithm and also try to utilize. But you have always the choice to utilize things in a complex way, non-personal, or saying that there are many options how we can interact with customers and surprise them and learn from them and engage them, which has sometimes no additional costs or very low costs, but are truly innovative in a sense that is unexpected. Others are not doing or is not usual, not even in our personal experience as customer with other companies. And then this is how we came to that idea. What if whenever we see these signals of customers, and in this case, I refer to the customer communication and the insights team, we use the opportunity to learn, not letting them or waiting that X% of those customers just leave us and then we try to win them back, because anyways, the vast majority of the customers never complain. So we anyways have limitations whenever we try to learn through complaints exclusively or other data exclusively. So what we tried out, and very successfully, by the way, that we first just utilized few people, later on this developed to a very sizable team of Outbound experts. By the way, in other companies, agents or representatives, we call them experts because they really are, and probably this is also a very good example to demonstrate why. Within the customer communication, the most experienced frontline team members, classic agents, as mentioned in other companies, to support us in this process because they know very well how to talk to these customers. We prioritized here for this trial the high lifetime value or very loyal customer group because we know them already better. So we also know how to talk to them. And giving a try to what if we approach this group of customers as our senior experts would be their account managers. So reaching them with very personalized, proactive calls and just sharing with them that, hey, we just detected, not talking obviously about algorithms, more data assessment. We just saw that recently you might experience some issues. And we are very curious to learn about your experiences, both the good and the bad, and how can we support you to ensure that this experience with us also in the future will be as good as at the very beginning, and how can we create you all those opportunities which might not be obvious to grab at the very moment. And then was really remarkable this journey also for us, how much customers have been surprised, how much they felt that and still feel that they are really valued, that their voice matters, that we are interested, and that really proactively sharing many things which were totally unknown for us oftentimes. And I think the other beauty, just apropos low cost on all of this, that we rarely need to utilize any vouchers to engage them. So they are really happy to share and engage and feeling that they are sitting at the table helping us to shape the product so that we be Marley Spoon together, which I think is a good perspective change mutually. And I think what was, of course, even more beautiful and helped a lot to size up the team and scale the team, that those customers whom we interacted with very measurably after the touch point, so after the meeting, the call, already in their first 13 weeks of further purchase upon the call, in their further journey, almost double the spend with us, regardless is not skipping a certain week in a box or just adding more to their basket. So I think they really made it tangible that they valued this touch point, not just said. And I think this kind of surprise is what really, really matters mutually, both for the business, but also for the customer and for the experts who are involved.
So based on what you were just talking about here, this surprise, it's a proactive call. And so it takes manpower to do. I'm sure you've had conversations internally about how can we scale a proactive program like this? As we get bigger, it would get harder and harder to do. What I love is that you tied it and you're tracking that to ROI for the business too. That helps, I am sure, in these conversations internally about, do we continue this kind of a program? How can we afford to do this kind of a program? And in our previous conversation, you kind of alluded to the fact that we don't ever want to be too big to proactively call and have conversations with our customers. Because not only is it ROI, but you said it just a minute ago, you learn so much from that conversation as well.
Yeah, and to be honest, many, whomever I'm talking to in my peer group in the industry, is a constant challenge, and it's not a new challenge for many, many years, particularly in customer service or in a customer service insights team. How to prove the value is also a very typical CXO, CCO challenge. How to prove that our function has relevance, how to engage the leadership, especially the upper level of the leadership, how to bring back this value to the company without just looking to and sounding too blurry or overwhelming, or maybe one day in the future, but okay, beautiful framework, but then what? And I think these are really those things what we can do, starting small, testing an idea, and really measure everything, both from company perspective, financial perspective, which could be retention, be it customer LTV, or all of these together. And the other thing that this is very highly contributed in our case, that it made much more easy to justify what does it mean when we say that we want to move the customer service from a cost center to a revenue center. So there have been multiple, let's say, use cases where this supported a lot, this kind of learning, and super simple.
Well, what you just said there is so important because even today, a lot of upper management, C-suite executives, still look at the contact center as a cost center. It's one of the biggest overhead costs in the business. Yet we know it's a revenue center. We know we're having more conversations with the customer than anyone else. We know we can help support every single department in the company. Back to your Amazon experience, they're the most customer-obsessed company in the world. And they're known for that. There's not a company alive, though, that says, we're not customer-obsessed. We're not customer-driven. But it's the actions speak louder than words. Are you truly acting like that? And one of the first things, and I'd love to have you answer this, one of the things that makes a company truly customer obsessed is having the contact center, the leadership have a seat at the table. Because if you don't have a seat at the table, that voice of the customer is not coming through.
Yes. On the other hand, of course, is also true that the company can really be customer obsessed, which is the other side of the job title, let's say customer officer, that it doesn't mean that the chief customer officer is the only person who is representing the customer in a company, but supposed to be a person who both in the leadership and towards the entire company is creating the framework and the enablement towards everyone to be able to act on behalf of the customers. What I mean is that through this framework, what I shared about how we measure the customer experience at each and every touch point, how do we measure and analyze both the qualitative and the quantitative side, but primarily on our end, on insights management, the qualitative side first, and then connecting this back to all the financials and the revenue aspirations of the company, and also providing the way how we provide with this data and information all various business functions. How do we democratize this data and enable the people, both within the customer service team and outside of the customer service team, to actually act, not just read data, but act on behalf of the customers, because they will have the confidence that they know based on all of that, and hopefully relatively easy way, what to do for them, giving them confidence that they approach and prioritize the right things for the customers. I think this is the power here, and this is where this moves from words, positions, job titles, fancy framework to really innovative capability to real customer obsession. I would say that I want to know, I work on all of these opportunities, both as individual and teams, based on a shared playbook and a shared agenda, and that we also create the room that people have access to all of these at any point of time. So creating an infrastructure and a certain extent mechanisms to work with that, and also understand what is the impact of this development. So not only just handing out data and then run with that, but also continuously see what is the impact on the life of the customers or the behavior of the customers. So this kind of ecosystem, which is really creating the obsession over time.
Well, we've talked about so much here, Katalin, and what I'd love to do is I'd love to get your advice for the audience, that if there was one main thing that you wanted us to take away from this. Our human brains, we can only remember 2 or 3 things at a time. What is it that you would like us to take away from this conversation today?
Yes. So we talked a lot today about loyalty, and I shared a lot about how the company functions and why it's so important for us, loyalty and the returning customers. We also touched upon the surprise element. And I think the key message I have to whomever is listening to that is that reliability, the empathy, and the courage to listen, but also enabling our people, co-workers, to not only listen, but also act and create surprises. This is absolutely crucial, not only in our business, but over time, more and more in every businesses. And I think that we oftentimes, if not always recently, in all occasions are talking almost exclusively about AI, but not so often we talk about the human aspect anymore. And I think that the future of CX and the good CX will be really about how can we create trust, not only from customer perspective, but creating trust within a company with all the people whom we are building things together in a way that this results in a scalable business. And I think AI and data and processes are helping us a lot to shape this and put this in a good framework, and adding constantly more and more, because all of these will be over time with the support of AI, obviously, more we do, more smart. But I think that the real innovation and the real trust of customers, who are obviously also human beings, regardless B2C or B2B, is really coming still from these human choices. And the human choice is what we make every day, and these nuances of human choices, human interactions, changes, and how we react to that, impressions, and how this influence us momentarily. So I think is also a very important thing to constantly keep in mind. And I think this is also a key message for everyone, that the customer journeys, as we always assumed in the last 10, 15 years that are very linear, or we can group customers that, okay, this customer is this segment, so this will be the customer journey. We assume that they will show or they will most probably follow, and then we try to build those experiences accordingly. These are less and less happening in the real life. And how can we adapt to that and constantly learn from each other? And as mentioned, scale while the trust is maintained. I think this is the key work here. And I think for me as CCO is also the main opportunity to continuously develop and help people also in the company to approach that well.
Yeah, our brands are trust marks, and it's trust externally with our customers, but what kind of an environment, what kind of a culture that we're promising, what kind of opportunities we're promising for the people that work with us. We know that our high performance teams internally are what makes our company. And so I love this. Thank you. I wish we had so much more time, but here's one thing that I know is that the mission of this podcast is to bring different perspectives, different insights based on different experiences from leaders all over the world. And if we can do that and we can all learn from it, then that's like the saying, a rising tide that lifts all boats. And I just wanted to say thank you because you did an amazing job helping be a part of that rising tide today.
It was really a pleasure meeting you.